You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. And we will come here. And I believe we are live now.
Hello and welcome to our live event. This is a 2-day live event, today and Saturday. And we call this event Profit and Podcast. And we are going to get you immersed in the world of podcast editing, how to become a podcast editor,
Yes.
what kind of jobs or side hustles you can launch with the training that you get as a podcast editor. And I'm super excited to be here. We are going to leave this live stream here on our YouTube channel. In case that you miss it, you can come back and watch it, or there are something that you can stay the whole time. So
yeah, and there's some really valuable stuff in here. Some stuff even beyond what you might think about podcast editing. There's a lot more that goes into podcast editing in terms of side hustle, making money online, and becoming just a creative professional in general. And a lot of times there's many entry points into the creator economy. And one of the best ones, the easiest, the most efficient, the most affordable is podcast editing. And it also happens to be one of our big passions.
Yeah.
So we're really excited.
Yeah, we're super excited. Also, if this is your first time seeing us and here on our channel, welcome. We are the Pod Sound School. We've been in the podcast industry for more than 5 years now. We produce podcasts. We teach people how to podcast. We train people how to work in the industry as well. So you are in super good hands, and we're going to give you some insights regarding the podcast industry. And we're just here to have fun and to give you all the information you need.
Yes. So if you're here, say hi, tell us where you're tuning in from, introduce yourself. It looks like we've got Chanel. How's it going?
Yeah,
Chanel,
hi.
Always tuning in on our videos.
And while we do
cool that,
so this is the format that we're going to be following. First, we have a presentation ready for you. We may stop in between our points just to see if there are questions regarding that point. But mainly we want to answer all your questions towards the end of our presentation.
Yes. And we want to also kind of stay on track to pump in as much information and as much value as we can into this live stream all about podcast editing. So I am working on the live stream here in StreamYard, and so I'll be checking your comments the best I can when I'm not caught up in things. But why don't we go ahead and start with the first part of this presentation. We're going to divide this into 3 parts. We love 3s. First, we're going to talk about the role, like what a podcast editor actually does, and give you some insights there. And then we're going to get into the path, the career paths, or ways that you can actually make money, and the ways that people are making money podcast editing. And then we'll finish up by talking about how you can scale it, or if podcast editing is something you can scale.
Yeah.
So to start with the role of the podcast.
So the role of a podcast editor, and just let me tell you right here, like I am a big podcast junkie. Like working and podcasting and doing what we do, it just gives me so much joy. And just to be able to see how a podcast is made from the beginning all the way until that episode is that final product is published to the podcast directories is just such an amazing thing to see. But I think it's important for you to understand that the role of a podcast editor is super important in the production of a podcast. The first thing that you do when you're planning a podcast, when you are producing a podcast, is the planning of the episodes. And this is where you decide what kind of content you're going to cover in your episodes, what kind of format your episodes are going to have, if you're going to have seasons, if you're going to have segments, if you're going to be interviewing people. Then from there it comes the writing of the episodes, the intro of the episode, the outros, the different pieces that you're going to be covering on the podcast. And then from there comes the recording, and this is where the host sits in their studio and records the content in audio form, and then those raw files are sent to the editor, which in my opinion are the magicians that take these raw files and turn them into this audio masterpiece that it takes a listener from the beginning to the end of a journey when they're listening. As if you would see the difference between what we send to our editors as far as raw footage and raw audio
Uh-huh.
and what it comes out to be, they are the ones who have all the talent, and they are the ones who deserve a lot of credit.
Yeah.
And then from there, then you get the distribution, which is how you get that audio, that finalized audio, and then you broadcast that to the different podcast directories, so the audience get to consume this podcast, and then the promotion and the marketing and so forth. And then from there, you're gonna take it, and
Yeah,
you're gonna explain what a podcast editor does day in and day
I
out.
love that too, because you really touched on all of the different sort of technicians and talent and people that are involved in a singular podcast episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite as straightforward and simple as you might think. Before I jump into that, I just want to say hi to Carl from Utah.
Hello.
The Three Dad Bods, producer of Three Dad Bods.
Hi.
Provo, not too far away from where we used to live in Draper.
Yeah.
And then we have Dhaka, if I'm saying that right, from Bangladesh. How's it going? James from Baltimore, and Anne from South Africa. If you're just tuning in, say hi, tell us where you're from.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pop in right where Veronica left off and talk about really how they turn the raw recordings into clean and a seamless audio experience. So as we're talking about the role of a podcast editor, I already heard little arguments, or you could say judgments, when Veronica was talking about how she's talking about, well, if you saw what we recorded before we sent it to our editors. And I heard somebody chime in and say, well, that's what I want. I want to see you guys raw, right? Or what I like about podcasts are, what I love about podcasts is that they're natural, and that I just like to be a fly on the wall. And these are arguments you hear all the time in the community. And we've made a lot of videos about whether you even need to edit your podcast. So a lot of podcasters are on, in that realm. And I just want to sort of clear the fog here and tell you that any high performing podcast has a lot of editing going on, even if you don't think there is editing there. In fact, some of the best editors, what's considered a really good editor, is when they are seamless or transparent, right? When you can't even see that the editing is there. Like when you're watching a TV show or you're watching a movie or something, if you notice the edit, and if you say, well, that was a weird edit, then that's maybe the editor wasn't doing their job right, or missed something, right? So the editor very much is a magician. I love how Veronica talks about that. But in real world terms, how you turn a recording into this seamless audio experience has to do with the two main phases of editing that we talk about all the time. And one of them is what I like to call the cleanup phase. And that is really where the storytelling comes into play during this cleanup phase. And that's when you can rearrange the order of how the interview happened or how the person's delivering the content. You can add stingers at the beginning. You can add takeaways at the end. You can add segments in the middle. You can decide to bring music in and out at certain parts. You can adjust the volume of the music in and out at certain parts. Then you could add sound effects. Sound effects are a tricky thing. Sometimes they can be a little cheesy or corny, or some audience members of yours may not like the sound effects. And so it's on a project by project basis. You may have clients that say they want their podcast to sound natural. They don't want you to do a lot of editing, but they still want you to take out the ums and uhs. They still want you to make them sound a little more intelligible. But of course, you got to find that balance too. And a well-versed, excellent podcast editor knows that balance. He knows that I'm not going to take out all of the ums and uhs. I'm going to leave a few of them in there, right? But I'm going to take out this sentence, or I'm going to take out that sentence. So that's all the cleanup phase. Really, really critical. And that's where art comes in and the creativity comes in. And it's also the more difficult or time-consuming part of editing. And then the next part is the polish, I've called it. But I don't know. I don't think I like to call it polish anymore, because the way Veronica says polish, I don't know.
Polish?
Yeah, it sounds like Polish when you say it. So I'm like, well, no, it's not Polish, it's polish.
Yeah, polish.
Actually, that sounded really good that time. Yeah, that sounded really good.
Polish.
You add the shine. I think I started saying the shine, but it's where you add the effects and the plugins, and you apply all of the effects that you need to apply. And we're not going to get into the complexities of that in this presentation, but those effects are basically you clean up the noise with noise reduction, and you also add some beef and some warmth in that radio sort of sounding voice and some intimacy. And so that's also part of the storytelling too, as far as how you apply those effects on a project by project basis. So
Yeah, definitely.
So basically, as you can see, podcast editor is a lot more than just a technician who applies compression and gates and makes things deliverable at the industry standard. Podcast editor is also an artist. So that was pretty much it for the first point, right?
Yeah, and I took some notes here because when I was working on this presentation, I'm like, how can I convey the work of a podcast editor in a sentence or in a few words? And for me, they're the ones that capture the essence of the brand in audio form. And they have a great ear. They ensuring listeners they ensure the listeners focus on the message and not the distractions from the audio. When the voices are too loud or the music is too high, they make it so when you're listening to a podcast, you just get so immersed in the message and the story that you don't even perceive the work that they did. So that's the kind of editor that we train. That's how our editors work. That's what we teach them to do. And I think that's super important. And they translate the client's vision into a finished product ready to be broadcasted. So if a podcast producer or a podcaster comes to you and tells you, I have this vision for my podcast, I wanted to have this kind of music, I wanted to reflect who I am, then you capture all that information and then you help your client to give that vision to come to life.
I love that. And I just have to interrupt you there because if you were listening and you're thinking about or you are a podcast editor, you're thinking about getting one, Veronica just gave you two really good marketing messages there. She said they have great ears and they ensure listeners focus on the message free from audio distractions. So rather than say, I edit podcasts, you could say, I have great ears and I make sure that your content is always focused on the message. And then the other marketing message she gave you was translates client's vision into a finished product ready to be broadcasted. That just sounds so nice.
Yeah.
I'm going to translate your vision into a clean, finished, shiny project ready to be broadcasted. You see how that sounds better than I edit podcasts.
Yeah. So this is the kind of training that we give to our editors. And this is the kind of work that you're going to get into if you get into podcast editing.
Yes.
And I want you to visualize your work that way.
And I think we're pretty good at about 13 minutes or so here. We have a few more people say hi. Spirit Check from DC.
Hello.
Budima. Also Rob loves the content so far. We love you too, Rob. And then we have Lepa, if I'm pronouncing that right. And also, Budima. So, hey, everyone, how's it going? We are going to be, and Carl loves your summary of the first step. Thanks, Carl. We are going to be answering questions more near the end. For our people who are going to tune into the replay, which we anticipate is going to be a lot of people on our channel here, we want to try to get all the beef of this presentation up front.
Yeah, let's keep it together.
So if you have questions, keep them in mind and hang around with us till the end because we really want to get into your specific questions.
Okay, so moving on, now we're going to talk about the career paths. Yes. Or the money, like how are you going to make money as a podcast editor?
Yeah, or currently, how do podcast editors make
how
money?
do they make money? And you may be in love with podcasting and you're just like, oh, I can't wait to edit podcasts because I get to, learn these different things and listen to crazy stories and interviews and all that. But also you're in it, or you will be in it, is to make money.
Yeah.
And
so there
are different career paths, or there's different opportunities that you can find in podcast editing. The first one would be as an in-house podcast editor. And I found numerous LinkedIn jobs posted on LinkedIn that talk about hiring podcast editors to work in-house editing the podcast that the company produces. And this is a fun way to be a podcast editor because it's just one podcast and you have you're in the workflow of producing that podcast, and also you're helping the marketing team, or your support for the marketing team for that company,
Yeah.
which is using podcasting to promote the business.
And your responsibilities will usually go leak over into other areas
Mhm.
of content marketing besides just podcast editing, because as a podcast editor, and we're going to get into
Mhm.
this more, you have a lot of other talents that
Uh-huh.
become.
It may be for a private podcast, which is only for the employees of the company. Like I found a lot of those
Mhm.
will be for a private podcast, or it can be for a public podcast, like I said, helping the marketing team for that company.
That sounds really fun. And I think that would be a job that people who really do want that steady income, they don't want to do, and they want that health insurance, and they want all the things that come from working for a company.
Yeah, they want to work for a team.
Yeah.
There's
also would be this next one on the list.
Yeah, this next one too is like there are podcast editing agencies. If you Google podcast editing agency, you're gonna get a few
We Edit
on the results.
Podcasts,
We Edit Podcast is one
Podcast
that
Fast Track.
Podcast Fast Track, and those have been around since we started 5 years ago.
They've been around for a good few years, and they're always looking for editors. And they have it kind of more customized, a little more streamlined. That also, like an in-house podcast editor, is a fun way to work as an editor.
Yeah, and then there's the podcast network or media production companies like Wondery Gimlet Media, Radiotopia. I took the liberty to go to Indeed and find those jobs, and because that's part of what I do too. I'm like, okay, like how, or like right now, what are the opportunities that are out there that podcast editors can go grab?
Yeah.
And I found in Indeed that there are many jobs, and that one I found that it was pretty cool. A podcast that I like is that Modern Love was seeking to hire a podcast editor.
And it looks like there's 120 to 130,000 a year. That's a pretty good gig, working on something creative. Right? And really fun. So.
And then our favorite one is freelancers,
or starting your own business, or creating your own creative agency,
your own company.
Yes.
And the advantages for this is that you get to set your own prices. I know that the prices, like sometimes you're I can already hear this question. I was like, okay, like the prices are set by the market, and sometimes the prices are set by how you position yourself in the market, how polished or how well crafted your marketing message is, and the services that you attach to your podcast editing service. And we're going to be talking about those in a minute.
All that, yeah.
But that's one of the advantages, that you can set your own prices, that you can work in projects you love. You get to choose who you work for, who you work with, in collaboration. Yeah, because you don't.
Better.
With is better. And that has been a thing that we do here. Like the podcast that we edited when we started our company. They were projects that we wanted to get into. There were projects that were fun to us.
People that inspired us.
People that we feel compelled to like.
It's also really great if you're someone who likes to like constantly be learning new things. You can choose bizarre subjects, something that you wouldn't typically be interested in.
Yeah. Like one of our editors, he's been editing podcasts for one of our clients, and he's been learning about agriculture in Canada and Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan agriculture.
And he likes it.
And actually, he's an expert.
He actually enjoys it.
At this point, he really is an expert in agriculture. If you were to ask him, he would know everything.
Yeah.
He knows so much cool information about agriculture.
And then the best part is that you can work remotely from anywhere.
Yeah.
Our first, some editors that we have trained, there's one that lives in Uruguay. Another one who lives in Mexico. I mean, they're all over the world.
Yeah, there's two couples, one that share. They live between. Right now, they're in Slovenia, and then they go back to France, and then we have the other one is
in Spain,
even though they're from Brazil. So it affords a lifestyle, any kind of lifestyle you want. It also works really well for stay-at-home moms. It works really well for people who, for couples. It seems to be really popular with couples to start creative agencies, kind of like what we've done as well.
It also works really well for those who are in school and need some extra money, and they can like run their side hustle on the weekends.
And then it gets really exciting when we get to the next point, which is it something we can scale? But what I wanted to touch on before that is also Veronica said that some people will argue that the price, how much you can charge, say, per episode, is based off of the market. The market determines the price. And that kind of depends on what marketplace you're in. So there is actually different marketplaces as well. There's Upwork, which maybe you're familiar with, and also Fiverr. So if you're going to go promote your podcast editing services on Fiverr, then yes, you will have a much more difficult time charging a decent rate because you have so many people there charging really low. And same on Upwork. And this is complaints we've had from editors that we work with. Our editors work on Upwork. We talk with them a lot about the pros and cons of Upwork. And that's one of them, is that, it seems to be a competitive marketplace. And on that marketplace, people are setting prices. So you feel inclined. Like even in those marketplaces, one of the best things you could do to stand out is charge more than everyone. Because people just want to know. And you'd be surprised the amount of business owners, professionals, and everything else who that's the first thing they look for. I know that, for example, we just worked with another creative professional who we were hiring to do some creative work for us. And my only concern with the pitch that they sent us was that they're not charging enough. And it makes you think like, what's going on here? Like, I want the top editor. I want an editor who's like the best. So actually you're doing yourself a disservice by not charging more than you feel comfortable with.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And like I said, it's also like how you present yourself and what you do. Like focus less on the actual work, but the value that you provide.
Oh, and hey, look, we have some tips. Leesmar gave us $10 from the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You guys are lovely.
Lovely. And Carl also as well. We really appreciate that. The super chat support. Looks like we got somebody tuning in from New Zealand. DA, how's it going?
Oh, hello.
And hopefully NZ is New Zealander. Well, and then I get us in trouble with things that I think I know. But this is really fun. Hopefully you're also saving your questions. And if you have any questions whatsoever, we'll spend some time on them for sure.
Okay, let's keep moving along.
Yeah, let's get to the last. This is the really juicy part.
Oh, okay. I have one more point that I'd like to touch on. And so that will be if you are working as a freelancer, something important. And I'm going to be talking more about marketing on Saturday.
Saturday's
and how you can build your presence online and how to tune in your marketing message so it's more effective, so it talks directly to the person that your potential clients. But with the freelance work, then you want to have some online presence and you want to work on your portfolio. You want to have some samples of your work that you've done, or that. And I hear, like, I have this question the other day. Somebody was telling me, well, I'm a new editor and I haven't edited a podcast for anybody. I haven't started editing podcasts. I don't have a portfolio. Well, you have the know-how and you can create your own portfolio. And that is something that we train our editors to do, like how you create a portfolio so you can show that to your clients. You don't need, if you don't have a client, that's fine. You can create your own podcast. You can edit your own podcast. You can edit your own samples and have those to every time you pitch your services to a prospect or to a potential client.
Also a really good idea on that note to pick up a podcast microphone anyway, and maybe even an affordable content creation video camera, so that when you are connecting with clients, that stuff looks good. They like to see that you have a little ring light on your desk and a little camera that's a little bit better than whatever's built into your computer. And a podcast microphone just sort of insinuates to them that you know what podcasting is all about. Those little things are important too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then now we move to point number 3, and this is the last point.
This is
And
a
that
really
we're
cool
gonna
point.
be talking about, okay, well, and I guess we didn't touch on the how much money you can make as a freelancer
Oh, we didn't give exact
editing podcasts.
numbers.
We didn't give exact numbers
Yeah,
because we don't want. I guess I'm afraid that if we give the numbers, like we're gonna just put you into this
into that
box
box. Yeah.
and we're not going to get you to
We
charge
could
your
give
worth.
you numbers of what people are kind of charging
Yes.
currently, what we know. Now, this is always changing, but currently it's very, or we could say what would be really easy to charge out of the gates. So if you have a good marketing message and everything, the bare minimum would be $100 an episode. And then you could very easily get up to $200, $300 an episode. And that's when you add on some of these other things that we're going to talk about in the third part. So I think that's why you wanted to go back there.
Yes.
So that this third part makes sense a little bit more.
So part 3, is it something that I can scale? Or am I just going to be editing a podcast for the same amount of money? And that's going to be the cap to my income. That's going to be the cap to the revenue I make.
This is
every
what excites
year.
me so much. And this is why it's such a big passion of ours, because podcast editing is probably my all-time passion in life, and yours is marketing. So we put the two of these together, and we're so excited to talk about this, because this is the real power behind it. And this is something I wish it was easier for us to convey, because in addition to building stackable skills, because podcast editing is something called the stackable skill, you're also entering into something that is absolutely scalable by its like nature. It's scalable. You get a college education in so many different, or even a vocational education in so many different things, right? And you usually find yourself in a job where you're capped, and there may be potentials for promotions and things like that along the way. And I just know so many of us can relate to that frustration. It's like you do something you love, you're supposed to do something you love, you're trying to find your life meaning or whatever it is.
Like somebody else is deciding how much money you're going to make a year.
Yeah. And somebody else is deciding whether or not you can take vacations, or how long your vacations are going to be, and all of that. And so this is something you can absolutely scale. And we're going to explain kind of how you can scale it.
Do you want to take that as far as podcast editing? Like, why do you find podcast editors that charge $50 per episode, and you find other podcast editors who charge $150 to $200
or $1,000 an episode?
Yeah,
what's the difference?
What's the different packages, or what's the different types of editing that you can do?
Okay, well, so if you were just going to do a very basic edit to a podcast, to an audio only podcast, then that's where you could get into something like $100 flat fee, $100 an episode. And then you give the deliverable, they call it in the creative world, would be what you deliver to the client, would be an MP3. So, or a WAV file, whatever, however they want it. And so you just send them the audio file, and then the client takes care of the rest. But it's very common that the client they already are hiring a podcast editor, right? So they already understand the value of getting leverage from working with creative professionals and not editing their own podcast. So they probably also don't want to post that. They don't want to take the 5 minutes it takes to put that MP3 onto their podcast hosting site. And so that alone, that one little extra step, that's only 5 minutes, enables you to charge more. So you can say, I can also post it to your hosting platform, and kind of basically manage your podcast in that way. So now you're entering into the world of podcast management. Interesting. And it's such a seamless thing. It just happens so naturally, because as you start working with clients, they start asking you for these things. They're like, well, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? And if you're crafty and go-getter, you say, yes, I can do that for you. And then you go figure out how to do it, and you get the education real quick on how to do it. And so that's one thing, is the distribution, you could call that. Then the other thing is they need show notes. They need copy. They need SEO packed titles that are also, you put keyword research into it. So now you become a copywriter already. And so you charge an extra for that. So that you see how you're crafting a package. You're crafting a package of services. And with each new client that comes to the table, you can say, these are my options for you. You know, I could do a flat rate, or I can do this or this or this or this. We heard in a business presentation, this really great analogy of the chef's table, and how in your business, you always want to have a chef's table. So you have the normal seats at the restaurant, and then in the back, you have the chef's table. And there's always going to be someone, there's always that person who has to sit at the chef's table. They don't care if it's $800 a plate. They're going to sit there. And then Veronica likes the analogy a lot of Louis Vuitton versus a purse you would get at Target, or Tory Burch sandals versus some chanclas you'd get at Target. She says, I want to be the Tory Burch, right? I want to be the Louis Vuitton. So you sort of decide how you're going to package your services. And when you get into that, you're the one who's kind of responsible for your own earning potential. So this can be a double-edged sword, because a lot of us do need to work on our confidence. A lot of us do need to work on our money mindsets and those things as well. A lot of that's what we find ourselves coaching a lot, is that kind of stuff. Because for some people, it's just unbelievable that they could charge more than $100 per episode. But that same feeling of disbelief, there's somebody on the other side that has that same intensity of disbelief that somebody would only charge $100 per episode. And so it's just where you want to put yourself. And obviously I kind of went off realistic examples of how you can scale. It was getting a little more philosophical or something, but you could also coachy. Yeah. You can scale with add-ons, or with what we call stackable skills or stackable services. Which I just mentioned, distribution. You can also then create promotional assets for them. So you can use lots of different applications to create audiograms, little vertical videos for them, all just with the audio. And then, of course, you can also include more skills into your skill set and be a video editor as well. And I have to say, once you've been trained as an audio editor, you can think of yourself as a timeline editor. It's immediate. All of those skills are immediately transferable into video editing. You already have a knack for video editing without even knowing it. And then also your skills immediately go into any digital audio workstation. If you learn the fundamentals, the audio fundamentals, you become very well versed in software that you haven't even tried yet. And then there's that. And then of course, while you're copywriting, now you can also give them blog posts. And you can charge for a blog post. And, there's all sorts of tools now, ChatGPT and AI tools, that enable us to take podcast transcripts and use the podcast transcript to generate a blog post out of it. And now you're a prompt engineer. So wait a minute, you were a podcast editor and now you're a podcast editor, a copywriter, a podcast manager, an SEO specialist, and you're a video editor. Then you could get into, I do color correction. And, I don't want you to be overwhelmed by this, because it's like, well, I can't do all that. I don't even know how to edit podcasts.
We just want to show you the possibilities.
We want to show you the possibilities
that are for you to choose when you take this path.
Yeah, when you take this path. And then the other thing that you could then say is take on more clients and hire people with all these skills you learn, and train the people what you know. And then you can scale that way too. So now you have tons of clients and you're more an executive person or a manager. And this is the 5-year, 10-year goal of entrepreneurship. So that's it really for the bulk of our presentation.
Yeah.
And then what we're going to do now is enter into our Q&A portion of this.
Yeah. Before we get into our Q&A, remember to come back to us on Saturday.
Same time, same place.
Same time, same place.
It will be a new stream, and you'll see that go live on our channel later.
We're going to send emails and we're going to set reminders for you so you can come and join us. And for that, we're going to be talking about the training that is required for you to become a podcast editor. We're going to be talking about the equipment that you will need to start edit podcasts. The marketing side of you using this as a side hustle or having your podcast editing business. And we're going to be talking about certifications that are out there or training that's out there.
And also introducing you to our certification program too, and telling you about that and bragging a little bit about our first batch of editors.
Yes.
And also with equipment, we're also going to get into software. So apps and things that you use, and client acquisition also goes into marketing too. So it's really like how you actually get clients. We're going to cover that a little bit, and how to communicate with clients and how to negotiate your rates and stuff.
Yeah.
So that one is like, if we sparked your interest at all, that, I think maybe I'm going to start dabbling in this, that we do have a free mini course that you could always take. And that you just go to podcastingsmart.com/free edit lab. You could also go to podsoundschool.com/free edit lab. If you go to our main YouTube banner, there's a link you can just click there that'll take you to the free edit lab. And that's this little program we put together that allows you to edit a podcast episode. And you can actually try it out, and you add music to it. And it's this mock podcast episode. And then you could submit your assignment for review. There may be some of you here that have already been to the free edit lab. If there are, let us know that you're a free edit labber. So definitely come join us on Saturday.
Yeah.
And with that, now we can enter into the Q&A. We do have a little bit of a latency. So we're about 60 seconds, it seems, or 30 seconds ahead of you. So, but yeah, let's see if there's anything here. And I don't know how, the way I will set it up on Saturday this way so I can bring your questions up on screen. I didn't set it up that way today.
Oh, okay.
But Tony December says, for the benefits of newbies here, please define how long an episode is in the raw and or finished episode, so they understand the scope of the work. Oh, that's pretty cool. So I really like that a lot. You want me to take that one? So basically, as a podcast editor, you will also negotiate how much you charge per raw recording, how long the raw recording is. So you do want to make sure to stipulate that when you're negotiating. And you say, if you're going to give me 60 minutes or less of raw recording, then it's this much money. But for every 15 minutes you go over that, then it's going to be this much money. The average podcast episode, we've gone into this so much over the years, and also what the podcast episode should be. Is there a good length that a podcast episode should be? The average one, I think there was two averages, and one was like 47 minutes, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since we've checked, but I would say it's somewhere around there. It's anywhere in the 20 to 40 minute range. And I think that people come to expect that. Just think about your own podcast that you listen to. Most of them are about 47 minutes, about an hour per episode, right? Once the episode starts to get over an hour, it really seems to be too long in a commercial way. So if you're you can look at the big commercial podcasts who sort of tend to dictate conventions that change over time. We're all used to about a 45-minute chunk of time, and that's similar to a TV episode as well. Personally, I prefer shorter episodes. I really like my episode 22 minutes, actually. And that's like TV episode length, right? When you take out the commercials. And so that's kind of up to you. And you're going to have clients that do that range. You'll have clients that they want to give you one 60-minute chunk, and they actually want you to divide it into 2 different episodes. And then they want 3 short videos out of each one of those episodes, right? So every client will be a little bit different. And it gives you an opportunity to negotiate different rates with each new client. So that's pretty much it. Now, in terms of how long it takes to actually edit that down, that's a really cool question. So let's say you have 60 minutes of raw recording, and the client hasn't told you how long they want it. They don't care. They're not like, you need to trim this down to a half an hour. They just want you to do your job. But they gave you 60 minutes of a raw recording. So to actually go through that, we train our podcast editors and we talk to them. The only way to most ethically and most efficiently really edit a podcast is to listen to the whole podcast recording. So if somebody gives you 60 minutes of raw recording, you're going to have to listen to that 60 minutes. Now there's some tricks, and actually had a video I just put out on our channel. It's called, it's the 2 time-saving hacks for podcast editors. It's a pretty recent video if you want to check that out, where I share this trick. And it's to use Descript to listen to your podcast back at double the speed. And so now 60 minutes of time, you can actually listen to it and it'll only take you 30 minutes. And while you're listening to it in Descript, you can also make some cuts, and you can start that cleanup phase while you're sitting there in double speed. So it's kind of like a hack to enter into super speed mode. And then finally, to finish this, I know this has become a long question. The real answer is, it's on average, I would say it's 2x is what we say in editor talk, 2x or 3x, depending on your level of experience. Myself, I can boast near 1x speed. And what I mean by that is, if somebody gives me 60 minutes of raw recording, I can pump out a polished, professional, great, top of the line podcast episode in an hour. It's really actually 1.1x. So 2x speed, which is where most of the podcaster editors that we've worked with have been able to achieve, is double the time. So if somebody gives you 60 minutes of raw recording, it's going to take you 2 hours to edit that. So even if it took you 3 hours, which is, that's still pretty fast. That's still pretty efficient. You can do the math there. $100 per episode. It's going to take me 3 hours max to edit that thing. That's $33 an hour, right? So it's pretty easy math there. And if I get faster, if I learn to instate these better techniques, then suddenly I just went from making $30 an hour to making $50 an hour, right? And that's sort of how you, as an editor, you learn that time is money, and you need to start to find, stop watching every little efficient thing you do. That's also something that we work with our trainer. We train our podcast editors to do, is develop good habits from the beginning, so that they can actually reach these numbers of being, how do you strike that balance between creativity and adding your special sauce to the edits that you do, and also efficiency, so that you can scale your business and that you can make
good money.
Make good money. Yeah. Okay. Do we have any other questions? That was.
We have a lot of questions.
Oh, we do. Okay. Hold on. Let me see what's going on here.
Stop. We should have started from the top. No.
Yeah, but now the things. Oh, here we go. Hi. Oh, right.
Go.
I don't see anymore. Oh, with AI, what are your feelings? And this is Carl. With AI, what are your feelings on the long-term future of podcasting? That's a cool question. Do you want to take that one?
Oh, sorry, but I just saw that we have more questions up here. Like, why don't we go in order?
Oh, well, these aren't questions. These.
Hi, I heard Kona was inspired to buy it.
Yeah, this is just a comment.
Oh, okay, but there's one.
Oh, how can I track the performance of my podcast using analytics? Okay.
We're not talking about performance. Then this one.
How to find clients, and what else do you teach? Okay, so we had from how to find clients, and what else do you teach? Do you want to cover that one too?
Yeah. So finding clients.
That's what we're going to cover on Saturday.
That's what we're going to cover on Saturday. However, I can tell you that there are different ways that you can find clients. But when you are starting, you need to be reaching out. You need to be sending emails,
cold emails.
You need to be on forums,
hitting people up on social media platforms.
You need to be posting your links and letting people know about your portfolio anywhere you can, because it takes some time to build up your online presence. And if you are going to go the content marketing route, that takes some time to build. However, there are things that you can do right now. You don't have to sit down and wait, until somebody will reach you on social media or will send you an email. You can be proactive and going into Facebook groups, going into forums, also posting your profile, open an account on Upwork, and uploading your portfolio, and just being on places where people can find you, and also being proactive in the sense of reaching out to people, reaching out to podcast producers, and reaching out to podcasters directly. You can go on, I was thinking the other day, you can go to Podchaser, and on Podchaser, you can find information about the podcast host or the podcast producer. And sometimes they have the emails there,
Mm-hmm.
and you can reach out and be very thoughtful and direct and use the right marketing language in those communications. And you will find clients this way, I can guarantee you.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be proactive.
Yeah.
And anything you do, really.
Yeah. Okay. So I did find,
what was the other?
well, I found some other questions. So this one
Oh.
right here is, do editors usually have to use the software that the hosts decide, or do the editors use whichever audio software they are comfortable with?
Mhm.
That's a cool question. And usually it's whatever software you're comfortable with. In today's world and all the new technology, it's the host doesn't really care.
Mhm.
The podcaster or the business professional or the creator, they're not going to care. They care about the output. Does it sound good? Does it look really good? That's what they care about. So what's cool though is once you learn the audio fundamentals, the way that timeline editing works, it doesn't matter. You can bounce between you could be experimenting between all of them. We teach in our programs. Right now we're teaching the twos that we teach are Reaper and Descript, because they're like this powerhouse together. But that could change 2 years from now. Descript, I don't think will. Descript is in the long run because their tools are just so advanced and cool, which leads us to the other question that we'll get to from Carl. But before we do, Veronica mentioned it's easier to go in order. So while you were answering, I found all the questions that are here.
Oh, okay.
The other question is, on average, what is the price for editing? And I think I answered that, or we tried to. I would say the average is 150. It's hard to give an average because there is no average really. The other way you can capture this information is to go to those sites, like we said, like We Edit Podcasts. It's been many months since I've been to their site, but last I checked, it was like similar. It was like 150 an episode, 100 an episode.
Yeah.
So that's
so and also depends with the kind of clients that you want to work with. You know, if you're going to reach out to independent podcasters that have a limited budget, then that may be an issue when you are setting your prices, because they don't have a budget for that.
Yeah.
And they may be still editing their own podcast because they don't have the vision that they have to let go of that so they can focus their attention on marketing and growing their audiences and things like that.
Yeah.
But for somebody who is in desperate need of help because they're running a business, because they're not interested in spending a whole day editing a podcast episode because they don't know how, then they will be paying more than just the indie podcaster editing his or her own podcast.
Yeah, and they'll value your time more and everything else.
Yeah,
so
and
there's a client out there for anyone, but and so sometimes you might be more gravitated to work for the indie podcasters because you like that content more, and so then you make the decision maybe to cut them a deal or to charge less. So really, the sky's the limit.
You take on a project, like instead of charging by episode, then you create a package that is just for them.
And you find a way to streamline
and you find a way to streamline, and also a way to charge so is good for you too, because if let's say that you're only going to charge $100 per episode, but then when they say I can edit 10 episodes, and then I can charge $80 per episode. But then you have that client, you have that income coming in, you have it locked. And that's the compromise that you make, is because of, okay, I have this chunk of money coming and is secure.
It's secure.
And I'm willing to do this episodes for $80.
Yes. And I know a lot of editors who take that route to secure the work over a long period of time. You can even give people a discount if they pay a subscription model. And a lot of editors are getting into subscription models, and they even use similar programs like we use for our online courses, like Kajabi, or different website platforms that allow you to have subscription models and have a hub and a portal for your people to upload their files and to control everything. You'd be amazed what people are doing. It's so cool what you can do as a creative professional. You just got to get your foot in the door and get started doing anything. And podcast editing is a wonderful way
to start.
Andrea says, I would love to hear a few episodes of a few shows with your style of editing, my style of editing.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time since I've edited professionally, because now I'm an instructor and I teach people how to edit. But I do have some fun shows, and I will send you a list.
But how?
I don't know. I'm going to have to figure out how to do that. But I'll put together some fun shows. The very earliest of our Pod Sound School, all of those I edited. But those you'd have to go way back and find that podcast. So, because that was so long ago, but I'll definitely give you some. My style of editing is very, very creative. I prefer to edit and work on podcasts that allow me to add a lot of music and sound effects and things. It was always my preference. And I always try to push it with clients. Sometimes even when and can I add music here? Can I add sound effects here? And a lot of clients, they don't want that. And for a good reason. A lot of times that can distract from the conversation. And so, but there's any number of kind of shows you can edit too. There's audio dramas. There's also, as a podcast editor, you're also a vocal narrative editor is another thing you are by the nature of the art form. So you can also edit voices for TV shows. You can go and be an assistant editor on big television productions because of the abilities you have. And also, being someone who comes from the entertainment industry, they don't, it's not as degree based as you would think. Like there's the education, sometimes they don't really care if you have formal education. What they really care about is that the output, the product that you're able to deliver. So anyway, I'll see if I can get that to you, Andrea. And then finally, here we are. Sorry, Carl. I wanted to get to yours because I think, Veronica, I want to hear what your thoughts are on this. He says, with AI, what are your feelings on the long-term future of podcasting? That's a good question.
Well, I think not only podcasting, but content creation just is getting to be even more interesting and fun and exciting. And I think there's some hesitation and fear in the creative and the industry that we're in, because we think that AI is going to replace a lot of people, is going to replace certain jobs and certain things. But I think my opinion is that the sooner you jump into learning these tools and become a master of these tools, the better for your future, for your career as an editor, as a content creator, as a person who has a business online. It is what we are seeing is that it's making our work even more fun, even more efficient, even more the sky is the limit when it comes to when it comes to the services that you can offer.
Oh, so nice.
And just think about it. Somebody who, like, for example, I'll give you our example. We are in the business of educating people, of training you. We're not in the business of editing our own content or on paying attention to the nuances of things or the day to day. Like, we want to focus on training people, on educating people. So that's why we hire people that can manage our social media. We hire people that who would edit our videos. So AI is not going to make it so, now there's this AI tool, we're just going to start editing our own content.
No.
Or we're going to start managing our own social media.
You still have to learn how to use the AI tool.
Yeah. Yeah. You still have to. So for you as a podcast editor, for you as a video editor, for you as a social media manager, if we have social media managers here, or podcast managers who want to add podcast editing to their portfolios, I think the work it's about to become more efficient, more interesting, more services that you can offer to your clients, more creative. And the more you learn how to master these tools, the more you learn how to utilize them for your workflow,
Yeah.
the more money you'll be able to charge, and the more opportunities will come your way, and the more your clients will love you, because they're going to be like, okay, wait a minute, like you edited my podcast in an hour. Like, how is that even possible? Or it took you 2 hours to have my podcast ready, and visuals ready, and copy ready,
and the show notes, and
the show notes, and like okay, you got this audio, and then somehow you transform this audio into a Word document, and then from that Word document, then you create a social media post and captions. Like,
and
you are a magician. So you are a magician. Like, that's how AI tools, they're gonna make you look like you are a magician.
Yeah, I love that. And on a more personal note, when it comes to AI and podcasting, as the art form, not necessarily the production behind it. I personally have hopes for AI that it's like the evolution of humanity, and also that it's positive for us, and that it will de-emphasize a lot of negative things that we have. That's my personal hope. And so because of that, I'm a little superstitious. And like when I use ChatGPT, I'm very polite. I say please and thank you all the time. I treat my Chappy well, and I recommend that you treat AI really nicely. So when you're using the AI tools, be nice, so that we can teach it like, okay, we're kind.
So they don't turn against you.
So they don't turn against us. But Veronica and I joke all the time. Like at this point, honestly, in our company, if it was between losing Veronica or ChatGPT, oof, that would be a hard one.
That's how important ChatGPT is in our business.
There was not too long ago, there was a day that ChatGPT went down, and it all felt like a dream. Like, has this just been a dream?
So it's a collaboration tools, and I think that the majority of the AI tools that are out there, they're like for you to collaborate. So you don't feel like you're doing it alone. So you have a way to share ideas, to organize ideas, to ask for information, to, in the case of the script, which is a powerful tool that we teach inside of our program that we have to train editors. Well, for training editors, the podcast edit lab. There are so many cool things that you can do inside the script.
And
the script is an AI tool.
And on that note, and Carl says ChatGPT is great for episode titles and descriptions. And on that note too, just finally to end with Descript, and then if there's any final questions, drop them in there so that we can answer them before we go. Descript has some really exciting, mind-blowing, revolutionary things. They already have one that's just been created, and now I forget what it's called, but basically they're in collaboration with OpenAI, and they have been even before a lot of the ChatGPT hype. And so Descript, if you just think about that, they're kind of working toward what a lot of these companies are working towards, which is basically prompt editing. And we're getting there, which is crazy, because one of the problems with Descript for a while has been that when you auto-detect the filler words and you auto-detect the things and you have the AI do all its stuff, is it still not accurate enough to understand the little nuances that take that human understanding. But now with this new feature, it applies its reasoning and the overdub feature of regenerating the host's voice and putting it in there artificially. And it will like change the tone of the voice and everything. And everywhere it makes a cut is now, I'm thinking that the future of what ChatGPT could do with that and video editing, it's basically, we are entering into the space where that will be a reality soon, where you get a file from your client, you drop the file into Descript, and you tell Descript how to edit it. You don't actually edit it yourself. But the thing is, so you're a prompt engineer, but your timeline skills don't go away. That thing's still going to need to be thrown into a timeline to do some of the mastering and the treatment to it. And there may be, at some point, there might be an AI software over there that would do that in a different software application, but it's always going to need the professional and the creative touch. It's always going to need that professional to put their hands on it. Otherwise, it's going to feel cheap and like a cookie cutter, and it's going to just be this pumped out cheap AI content that feels like spam because it's missing what draws us towards content to begin with, and that's our humanity, that's our creativity, that's our uniqueness, and our what makes us who we are, right? So it's been our experience so far with AI, at least, that AI seems to just be drawing that out of us more because it gives you opportunities to be more creative. And the more that we can have some of our administrative tasks taken away from us, the more we can focus more on what makes us so creative to begin with. But oh boy, that's not what this was about. Sorry, Carl. Yeah. So that's it. And then Carl also says, Descript is a cool, just don't feel like I've scratched the surface yet. My PC is too slow. Yeah, I know the pain there too. We've got fire signs, embrace AI, don't be afraid of it, DA says. So that's it. It doesn't look like we have any more final questions. This video will, like Veronica said, we're going to leave this live here on our channel for a while so you can watch the replay. Make sure you come back Saturday. That's when we're really dropping the very valuable nuggets. So do you have anything else?
No.
Okay, well then we'll go ahead and end the stream and we will catch you later. Happy creating, good luck, and to your success.
Bye.